Hello, good afternoon. Today I'm going to review the new book by Adrian Allan on Paul McCartney. It's called Paul McCartney, After the Beatles, A Musical Appreciation. So Adrian is an accomplished guitar player and guitar teacher who lives in England and born in 1971. And I've known him for a few years on social media, and we discuss McCartney's music. We have discussed it, and I particularly remember discussing the fact that the broadcast from Back to the Egg was in the key of F sharp major, which was quite unusual. So Adrian's taken the approach of selecting 80 songs from Paul's career, which I assume are among his favourites, maybe not in every case, but because he's been quite even-handed and made sure he's included songs from every period of his career, even though he may himself have favourite periods or favourite albums for all I know. He doesn't say. He's quite respectful in this book and says, look, one man's ceiling is another man's floor, as the song goes. So some people might like this album or that album, but it's all subjective. And what Adrian's doing in this book is analysing primarily the musical structure of each song he looks at, but also touching on the lyrics quite frequently, talking about the song structure, giving credit to the orchestration or arrangement done by the array of support people that Paul used throughout his career, from Denny Laine and Linda McCartney in the Wings years, and Jimmy McCulloch, guitarist Joe English, Denny Sywell. For example, to Eric Stewart in the 80s, George Martin on occasion for orchestrations, Tony Visconti, the Band on the Run arrangements, for which he only recently received credit. Who else? Carl Davis, Golden Earth Girl, Richard Hewson. So he's giving credit to the musicians as well, and for example, Denny Laine is talked of quite fondly in this book, which is not always the case. When I was reading it, I could keep up with some of what Adrian was saying in terms of the technical chord structure, because I'm a kind of rudimentary reader of guitar chords as an easy way of playing a song on the piano, so I can just about handle the basic chords in the G7 and the G major 7th, even G diminished or G augmented. I understand what it is. It's when I struggle when it comes to things like G13 even G9. No, I think G9 is quite easy. But so I had the sheet music for London Town, for example, and I was reminded on the beginning of With a Little Luck, the opening chord is A/B, meaning the A chord with the B on the bass. But Adrian, I don't think he's a particular fan of these, what he calls slash chords, and there is a musical term for that chord, which many guitarists will be familiar with, but as a reader of guitar chords in order to play a song, I find those slash chords very useful, so I just thought I'd throw that in. Lots of interesting stuff in this book. When he's talking about Warm and Beautiful, he says it's similar to a hymn, and then he bemoans, or he points out the fact that in the schools there used to be quite a strong tradition in England of hymn singing, and I remember that from my childhood, and it's kind of died away now as schools have become more or less Christian focused and more accommodating of other religions, so that the traditional hymn singing in school assembly has probably not gone out the window, but it's just not in the mainstream anymore. What else? That I just thought I'd mention that. As I was looking at the techniques used by Paul and some of the diminished chords and stuff, I was reminded of some George Harrison songs where a similar technique was used, and it would be interesting if Adrian would consider maybe doing a book on some of George's best songs, because I was thinking I'd Have You Any Time and Beware of Darkness in particular are rich with very interesting chord changes. by the way, before I forget to mention, by the way, Adrian is very careful not to incur any copyright strikes by not quoting more than 3 words of a song and not reproducing any sheet music. This bit of sheet music on the front, I was looking at it and trying to hum the tune, and then I recognised the tune. With a bit of help from my sister, we reckon it's I'll Take the High Road, You Take the Low, which I think the song is called Loch Lomond. So that was quite a nice touch, Adrian, to put that in, to see if anyone noticed, I guess. I did. So I want to just talk about another great thing about this book is it sings the praises of many songs which have been slagged off over the years or not given much credit. And an example is Mary Had a Little Lamb. It is the only song by McCartney that employs an extended section of tritone substitution. Such a level of harmonic sophistication could, in the wrong hands, sound contrived or academic. That McCartney uses these devices without exception to serve the greater musical end is a mark of his innate sense of musicianship. That he manages to combine this level of musical sophistication with such a degree of childlike naivety represents a profound example of complexity hiding behind a thin veneer of simplicity. So just a general theme throughout this book, if Adrian's interested in the musical side of a song, he'll quite often overlook the lyrics or not get wound up if the lyrics aren't the best in the world. This book, as I say, is primarily looking at the musical side of things, but he does point out, when a lyric is particularly good or strong, he'll point that out. I mean, he rarely gets upset with the opposite. But there's one case like My Brave Face where he points out that the music and the lyrics don't fit together like a glove, which detracts from the song a bit. And another overlooked gem from the Venus and Mars album, Love in Song, is given very warm treatment in this book, and Adrian sums it up at the end. Love in Song is a masterpiece on many different levels. The opening chord sequence that bookends the piece is an inspired piece of harmonic design that immediately evokes an unusual and intriguing aura. McCartney capitalizes on the exotic potential of the harmonies by utilizing a unique combination of instruments, taking the song to a level far elevated from the norm of 1970s pop music. When a stirring bridge passage is added to this mix, it is little wonder that the overall result is one of the most compelling and moving tracks in his entire post-Beatles career. He talks warmly of Denny Laine throughout this book, or throughout the 70s section anyway. And The Note You Never Wrote, the song McCartney penned for him on Speed of Sound, he's very complimentary about. And says, the Note You Never Wrote is one of the most atmospheric and evocative songs from the entire Wings catalogue. The 3/4 time signature immediately sets this song apart from the norm, but as the song progresses, it follows a circuitous path, meeting unexpected harmonies that evoke a variety of moods. They range from intense passion in the D minor and A7 section to a slightly remote and dreamlike introspection achieved through the use of major 7th and minor 9th chords. These features are a perfect match for the lyrics, which are cast in a narrative style. Special commendation must be given to Laine and McCulloch. Both musicians managed to capture the very essence of the song and to stamp their own identity on it. Good stuff. London Town, one of my personal favourites, is talked about warmly. It exudes originality, having a unique structure and varied approach to melodic phrasing. More importantly, this lyrical ballad never fails to pack an emotional punch and still sounds fresh and inventive in 2019, some 41 years after its original release. I thoroughly agree. I'm Carrying, another one of my favourites from London Town. Adrian sums up, I'm Carrying is a stunning piece. It was apparently a favourite of George Harrison, who called it sensational. High praise from a man who seemed to reserve an air of slight disdain for his former colleague and for extended periods in the decades after the band's demise. Like McCartney's later guitar ballad Little Willow, I'm Carrying is a prime example of art concealing art. On one level, it seems almost dismissively simple until you try to write something similar and will inevitably fail. Good stuff. Don't Let It Bring Me Down is talked about. The use of the flagello is interesting. Getting Closer, another example of the where he goes from a major chord to the minor version of that chord. Quite an effective songwriting technique. Tug of War is undoubtedly one of the masterpieces in McCartney's solo career. His ability to produce a melody of intense lyricism out of 3 primary chords defies any logical explanation. It would have worked well as an unaccompanied piece, but there is no doubt that Martin's lush orchestration takes the song to a completely different level. The decision to use a full-bodied string section consisting of 20 violins, 8 violas, 6 cellos and 3 basses was a shrewd choice. It lends a stated gravitas to the simple phrase tug of war and transforms this 4-minute ballad into a rich metaphor for the struggles inherent in the human condition. Very nicely written. No More Lonely Nights is talked about, and Adrian speculates why this song is not hasn't been played in concert, and he thinks it's because it's associated with Broad Street, and that's probably the case. But would it be an easy one to do in concert? Well, you wouldn't have Dave Gilmour doing the guitar solo for a start. Now, one song which has been ridiculed by some people over the years is the Frog song, We All Stand Together. People, and my opinion is that people just fail to accept that it's a children's song and just take the mickey out of it because it's got frogs in it. But you know, it's from a very successful animated Rupert the Bear cartoon, and the song got to number 4 in the charts, and that video, which also contained the Oriental Nightfish clip, is sold 130,000 copies. So We All Stand Together has been at the heart of many pointed jibes at McCartney since its release in 1984. However, those who use the song as a weapon to denigrate the composer have surely missed the point of the exercise. As a piece of musical theatre and storytelling for children, it is hard to think of a song that could have been more successful. McCartney met his brief, and the song's success exceeded all expectations, peaking at number 3 in the UK charts and remaining in the top 10 for no fewer than 6 weeks. The subsequent VHS video release of the song, along with Oriental Nightfish and Seaside Woman, formed an important part of children's popular culture in the 80s, in the UK at least. There is no doubt that a major part of the success of the song was due to the craftsmanship and musical imagination of George Martin. His detailed score demonstrates a consummate understanding of orchestral textures and the potential for soloists to add colour and personality on each return of a familiar melody. Those who dismiss We All Stand Together are regrettably making a judgment of the song based on its genre alone. In terms of musical detail, it actually bears comparison with some of the most accomplished works to have stemmed from McCartney's solo years. Well said. Interesting that this song was actually recorded in November 1980, before John died. Well, maybe it was orchestrated after that, but the original recording apparently was from November 1980. So that's, I didn't know, or I'd forgotten that. So yeah, a lot to recommend in this book, even if you don't really understand some of what Adrian's talking about in terms, because he does get very technical on and quite amusingly. I mean, you just read on and you pick up the bits you understand and you try to imagine what the other bits mean. But it's good that someone's taken this approach of looking at the musical structure of McCartney's songs. I remember Wilfred Mellors did something similar on his book Twilight of the Gods on the Beatles, but I think Adrian's taken it to an even greater level. He's obviously an accomplished musician in his own right, and he understands the technical side, and quite amusingly, Paul writes it just from his head because he doesn't understand musical structure, so which makes it even more remarkable, as Adrian points out, that McCartney's able to use all these techniques almost subconsciously because he's never studied music seriously, and he doesn't know how to read sheet music to this day, or that's what he claims anyway. So thank you very much, Adrian Allan, for this superb book, highly recommended to everyone, and thank you for watching. See you next time.